The window shattered before I even heard the shot. 1 second, I was sitting in the back of a luxury car in Johannesburg, doing my job, minding my business, and the next second, I had a Korean Mafia boss pinned beneath me, glass in my hair. My heart slamming against my ribs like it was trying to escape my body. His hand was on my back, not pushing me away, holding me there. And that right there was the moment I knew I was in serious trouble. Not because of the bullet, because of the way he said my name afterward. My name, not Miss Dlamini, not translator, Zara. Like he had been saving it. This is the story of 3 weeks that I did not ask for, a man I was never supposed to feel anything about, and the moment I stopped pretending that I didn't. Stay with me. It gets worse before it gets beautiful. But before I continue, if you are new here, welcome to Afro-Seoul drama, where African hearts meet Korean souls, and nothing ever goes the way it should. Hit that like button and subscribe so you never miss a story. Now, let's go. My name is Zara Dlamini, 28 years old. Born and raised in Johannesburg, South Africa, by a mother who used to say, "Zara, your spine is your greatest weapon. Stand in it." I speak 5 languages: Zulu, Xhosa, English, Mandarin, and Korean. The Korean was an accident, the way the best things in life usually are. I was 16 years old, homesick from school, and I stumbled onto a Korean drama that a friend had downloaded onto my laptop without asking. I watched 1 episode to kill time. I watched the entire series by 3 in the morning. I don't know how to explain what happened to me in those hours except to say that something cracked open inside my chest and light got in. The language, the culture, the way emotion was carried in the silences between words rather than in the words themselves. I was obsessed. Not in the way girls are obsessed with celebrities, in the way that quietly rearranges you. I started learning Korean the next day. Not from an app. From textbooks I ordered online, from YouTube videos, from a language school in Rosebank that cost more than my mother wanted to spend, but she paid anyway because she said, "If you're going to do something, Zara, do it until it's done." 3 years later, I was on a scholarship in Seoul. I came home with a degree in international relations, fluency in Korean dialects that most Korean people double-checked me on, and a very clear idea of what I wanted my life to look like. A good job. A quiet apartment. Work that used my brain. I got all 3. What I did not plan for, what I could not have planned for in 100 years of planning, was him. It was a Tuesday when everything changed. I remember because Tuesdays were always slow at the firm. Santun Executive Translations, a small and perfectly respectable office where I had worked for 2 years turning business deals across language barriers. My boss, Mr. Okafor, called me into his office at 9:30. Now, I need you to understand something about Mr. Okafor. This man had once delivered news of a burst pipe flooding our entire server room with the energy of someone announcing pleasant weather. He did not get nervous. He did not fidget. That morning, he was fidgeting. He folded his hands on his desk, unfolded them, folded them again. "Zara," he said, "I have a client." "You have many clients," I said. "Not like this one." He slid a paper across the desk. "He needs a personal translator for 3 weeks. Accommodation covered. Transport covered. The rate is..." I looked at the number. I looked at it again. 3 weeks' work for what most people in my position made in 8 months. "Who is he?" I asked. Mr. Okafor cleared his throat. "His name is Kang Hyun-jae. He runs a Seoul-based investment group. He's here for partnerships, mining, agriculture, coastal development." "And?" I said, because I could hear the word he wasn't saying. "And he is very private," Mr. Okafor said carefully, "and very particular. He asked specifically for someone with fluency in colloquial Korean. Not formal, not textbook, real Korean." I sat with that for a moment. "Send me the contract," I said. I told myself it was a professional decision. Looking back, it was curiosity. It was the number on that paper. It was the part of me that had always been drawn to things that felt bigger than the room they were offered in. I said yes. I should have asked more questions. But you already know that. I arrived at the Michelangelo Hotel in Santun at 7 the next morning. Gray suit. Locks pinned. portfolio under my arm. The picture of professional calm. Inside, I was calculating everything, what I knew about Korean business etiquette, how to address him, how to make clear within the first 2 minutes that I was exceptional at my job and had no interest in being treated as anything less. A man in a black suit met me at the door before I reached reception. He didn't introduce himself. He didn't smile. He said, "Miss Dlamini," and turned and walked toward the elevator, and the way he moved told me clearly that in his world, people followed without being asked twice. I followed. Top floor. The suite was enormous, floor-to-ceiling windows. The city spread out below us in early morning gray and gold. There were 4 men in the room. Korean. Dark suits. The particular stillness of people trained to watch without being seen watching. And then there was him. Kang Hyun-jae had his back to me. He was at the window, one hand in his pocket, phone to his ear, speaking in Korean too rapid and too low for me to catch more than fragments. He was tall, broad. His suit was black and fitted in the way that only bespoke tailoring achieves, and he stood with the kind of stillness that doesn't come from calm, it comes from complete, practiced control. He ended the call. He turned. And I, who had mentally prepared a thorough first impression, completely forgot what I had prepared. His eyes were sharp in a way that made everything else in the room go slightly out of focus. Not because he was handsome, though he was, but because he looked at me the way very few people look at anyone, like he was actually seeing me, assessing, deciding, all in the space of 3 seconds, and had already reached a conclusion he was not yet ready to share. He spoke in Korean. "You're the translator." Not a question. I answered in Korean without hesitating. "I am Zara Dlamini." 3 weeks, as agreed. Something shifted behind his eyes. The smallest recalibration. "Your Korean is better than I expected," he said. "Most things about me are," I said. The man who had walked me upstairs made a sound. I am fairly certain it was a laugh, quickly killed. Kang Hyun-jae looked at me for exactly 1 more second. Then the corner of his mouth moved barely, like it was something he almost didn't allow, and he said, "We leave in an hour. Don't be late," and turned back to the window. I was dismissed. I walked out of that suite telling myself I was not affected. I was already affected. By the end of day 1, I had already updated my understanding of who Kang Hyun-jae was. The meetings were legitimate. Mining rights, agricultural partnerships, coastal real estate. Everything above board on the surface. But I am a woman who has spent years listening to what lives beneath language, the gap between what people say and what they mean, and there was a whole other conversation happening in the margins of every room we entered. Documents that appeared and disappeared too quickly. Phone calls taken outside in Korean too quiet and too fast. The way the men around him, I had learned their names by now, Shin and the others, positioned themselves in every space we entered. Backs to walls, eyes to doors, hands that rested too close to jacket pockets. These were not investors. Or rather, they were investors the way an iceberg is ice. What you saw above the surface was real. What moved beneath it was the actual thing. I filed this away, said nothing, did my job with the precision I was being paid for. And then there was the silver car. I noticed it leaving the second meeting on day 1. Parked across the street. Dark windows. Same driver from arrival to departure, 45 minutes. Not a journalist. Not a competitor. The particular focused stillness of someone conducting surveillance. I said nothing that day. That evening, Hyun-jae and I were alone in the elevator for 11 seconds. The silver car, I said quietly in Korean. Same driver. All day. He was there when we arrived and still there when we left. Hyun-jae said nothing. The doors opened. He stepped out. Then, without turning, "Good night, Miss Dlamini." I told myself he hadn't processed it. Or hadn't cared. The next morning, the silver car was gone. And Shin, who had looked at me like furniture from day 1, nodded at me in the lobby as I walked past. Just once. Barely perceptible. But I noticed. The problem with guarding your heart is that the things that get through aren't usually the dramatic ones. It's never a grand gesture that undoes you. It's never the thing you could have prepared for. It's the small things. It's the rooibos tea. On the second day I had mentioned, once, in passing, that I preferred rooibos to coffee. An idle comment. I didn't even think he was listening. He had been reviewing documents when I said it. Every meeting venue from day 3 onward had rooibos tea waiting. He never mentioned it. Never pointed it out. It was simply there. Like he had made a note in that precise mind of his and acted on it quietly, without requiring acknowledgement. It was the Korean. In one particularly difficult meeting on day 5, one of the local partners brought in a consultant who spoke in a rapid regional dialect, fast and dense and harder to follow than standard Korean. I was keeping up, but only just. Hyunjae noticed. I don't know how, but he did. He began steering the conversation slightly, asking questions that slowed the consultant's pace, giving me room to breathe, without ever making it look deliberate, without ever making me feel like I had failed. He protected my competence without announcing that he was doing it. That undid something in me I had not known was tied. And then there was the dinner. Day 4. We were held late in a government office downtown, a meeting that ran 2 hours longer than scheduled. I had not eaten since early morning. By the time we left, I was running on will and professionalism alone. He said nothing. He told the driver to stop at a small restaurant near the hotel. Walked in. Sat down. By the time I sat across from him, food was already on the table. He looked out the window and said nothing while I ate. He didn't comment on the speed. He didn't make it a thing. He simply provided and looked away and gave me the dignity of hunger met without fuss. I looked at him across that table, the hard line of his jaw softened by warm yellow light, the tiredness he kept so carefully hidden finally just barely visible. His cup held in both hands the way people hold things when they have learned to be gentle with small moments even as the rest of their life requires hardness, and I felt something shift in my chest. Something I had been holding. Something I had not realized I was holding. You don't have to do this, I said. He looked at me. The tea. The food. I'm here to work. You don't need to take care of me. He was quiet for long enough that I thought he wasn't going to answer. I know, he said finally. So quietly I almost missed it. I wanted to. I did not sleep well that night. 9 days in. We were returning from a late dinner with investors, a successful evening, deals made, the kind of night that feels easy and open. We were in the middle car of a 3-vehicle convoy, 20 minutes from the hotel. I was reviewing my notes. Hyunjae was on his phone. The front car stopped without warning. I saw Shin's head turn sharp, immediate. His hand went to his jacket. Then 3 things happened at the same time. The car behind us flashed its lights. A black SUV appeared from a side road and cut off the front vehicle. Shin's voice, one word, like a stone hitting water. Down. I did not think. I grabbed Hyunjae by the collar of his jacket and pulled him sideways across the seat. The window where he had been sitting shattered 1 second later. The driver was already moving, accelerating through a gap in the road that I hadn't even calculated. Shin was on the phone. I could hear his voice, rapid and low, calling in positions. Glass was on the seat. Glass was in my hair. The city streaked past the broken window like a fever dream. And Hyunjae's hand was on my back. Not moving. Not gripping. Just there. We drove for 7 minutes. No one spoke. When the car finally descended into the underground garage of the hotel, the silence broke open and everyone moved at once, Shin out of the front, the other men appearing from nowhere, voices low and urgent. I sat up. Glass fell from my shoulder. Hyunjae sat up beside me. And he looked at me. Not the assessing look from day 1. Not the careful, controlled gaze I had been navigating for 9 days. He looked at me like a man who has just understood something he had been refusing to understand, and the understanding has arrived too fast and too late at the same time. How did you see it? He asked. His voice was different. Quieter. Like something had been removed from it. I always see things, I said. My voice was steadier than I had any right to. He reached up. Slowly. And with a care that made absolutely no sense given the last 7 minutes of our lives, he removed a small piece of glass from one of my locks. His fingers barely touched me. It was the most intimate thing anyone had done to me in years. Zara, he said. First name. In 9 days, never once my first name. Don't, I said. Because I knew. I could feel the shape of what was coming, and I knew what it would cost me, and I was not ready. "I'm not sorry," he said. "For whatever you think I'm about to say, I am not sorry." I looked at him. "You should be," I said. "You know what this is." "I know what it could be," he said. Shin knocked on the window. We got out of the car. We went to our separate rooms. I stood in the shower for a long time and let the water run cold. I sat on the edge of my bed that night and had a very honest conversation with myself. He was a client. He was dangerous, not to me directly, but everything around him vibrated with risk, and I was smart enough to understand that proximity to his world had a cost. He was Korean. I was South African. In 12 days, he would fly back to Seoul, and I would go back to my desk in Santan, and this, whatever this was, would become a thing I turned over in the dark when I couldn't sleep, and eventually stopped turning over. I knew all of this. I knew it clearly and completely. And then I spent 15 minutes on my appearance the next morning that I had not spent since day one. I put on my best dress. I did my edges properly. I wore the earrings I had been saving for something that mattered. I told myself it was just confidence. Professional armor. I walked into the breakfast room. He was already there. He looked up from his phone the instant I walked in, like something in the room had changed, like he felt the shift before he saw me. And then he stood up. He stood up. He stood up. I want you to understand, this was not a man who performed courtesies. In 9 days, I had watched him walk into rooms full of important people and acknowledge them with nothing more than presence. He did not stand for people. It was simply not part of how he moved through the world. He stood up for me. Something very old and very quiet rose in my chest, and I had to breathe through it. "Good morning," he said. In English. Deliberate. "Good morning," I said. In Korean. Equally deliberate. We looked at each other. And we both almost smiled. Almost. His name was Park Jun-seo. He arrived on day 11. Flew in from Seoul unannounced. Expensive coat. Expensive shoes. The smile of a man who has never genuinely heard the word no and considers this a personal achievement. He was Hyunjae's business partner of 7 years. And from the moment he walked into the room, something in me went very still and very alert in the way that it does when something in my environment is wrong, but I can't yet name exactly what. I caught pieces of their conversation when I stepped out briefly and returned sooner than expected, just fragments before the voices dropped. Debt. Territory. Too close. Words that didn't belong in any investment meeting I had ever translated. I filed them. Said nothing. But it was the way Park looked at me that settled it. Hyunjae looked at me like I was something he was working very hard not to want. Park looked at me like I was something he was already calculating how to acquire. That evening in the corridor, he stopped me. "You're impressive," he said, in smooth Korean. "Hyunjae is lucky to have found you." "I'm an employee," I said. "Luck has nothing to do with it." He smiled. "Of course. Still, it must be interesting. Being so close to a man like him." A pause, deliberate, designed. "How close exactly?" I looked at him for a long moment. "Good night, Mr. Park," I said, and I walked away with my spine straight and my face empty. That night, I went to Hyunjae's suite. I knocked. He opened the door, and I saw in his face, for just one unguarded second before he composed it, something that looked like relief. "Park," I said, "tell me what is actually happening." He looked at me. Then he stepped back and let me in. He told me. Not all of it. I could feel the shape of what he was leaving out, the weight of names he wasn't saying, the edges of a world I did not fully need to understand to recognize its danger. But he told me enough. Park had been moving money through their company for years. Money that didn't belong to either of them. Money connected to people in Seoul whose names Hyunjae said carefully, like they had texture, like they cut. He had discovered it 6 months ago. He had been trying to find a clean exit, legal, careful, without becoming an example. The attack had been a warning, not an assassination attempt. A message. A reminder that clean exits were not always offered. "The connections in South Africa," I said. "That's why you're here. People Park doesn't know about yet," he confirmed. "People who can help me step back without bleeding." I sat with that. "And me?" I said. "Where do I fit in all of this?" Because I was hired to translate business meetings. That is what I agreed to. He looked at me from across the room. You were never supposed to be anything more than that, he said. And then he stopped himself. I pulled you down in the car, I said. You pulled me down in the car, he repeated, like he was still processing it. Before any of my men moved. Before I moved. He shook his head slightly. I can leave, I said. If my being here creates risk for you. If Park can use me as a... No. His voice was quiet. Absolute. Not loud. Not commanding. Just final. I looked at him. He crossed the room. And I want to be precise here because I want you to understand that this was not a reckless thing. Neither of us was reckless. Both of us understood exactly what we were doing and what it cost. He stood in front of me and he said, I know what this is. I know what it costs. I know the ways it doesn't make sense. His eyes stayed on mine. I am not sorry. He had said that before. In the car. I had spent 9 days keeping something very carefully in place. I let it go. In the days that followed, I learned what it means to love something you have already agreed you cannot keep. It is not what the stories describe. It is quieter than that. It is standing a little closer than necessary when reviewing documents, close enough to feel the warmth of him, not close enough to give anything away. It is his hand at the small of my back for exactly 1 second walking into a room full of people, the lightest possible weight, the loudest possible message, spoken only to me. It is conversation. Real conversation, the kind that happens at the edges of evenings when the professional structure of the day has dissolved, and it's just two people who have stopped pretending. He told me about soul. About a father who spoke in silences and taught him that strength was not something you declared, it was something you demonstrated quietly over years. About the weight of building something from nothing and the particular loneliness of arriving somewhere and realizing you have no one beside you to share that it was worth it. I told him about Johannesburg, about my mother, about 16-year-old Zara watching a Korean drama by lamplight and feeling, for the first time, that the world was larger than what she could see from her window. He listened. Not politely. Not patiently. He listened with his whole attention, the kind of listening that makes you feel like everything you're saying is the most important thing that has been said in that room. Like the rest of the world had agreed to wait. I understood slowly, and then all at once, that this man was not the danger I had been warned about. He was the danger I had never thought to warn myself about. Park noticed. Of course he did. He said nothing directly. But I caught him watching us in the particular way of a person who has identified a leverage point and is calculating the right moment to apply it. And I knew, without anyone telling me, that whatever Hyunjae was trying to protect me from, Park had just found something more efficient than a silver car. Me. I was the thing that could be used. The last evening arrived the way they always do. Dressed as just another night. Pretending to be ordinary. Final dinner with the partners. Everything polished and finished and professional. I translated without error and smiled at all the correct moments and did not once let my eyes stay on him any longer than the job required. Afterward, in the lobby, the team moved toward the elevators. Park lingered, said something to Hyunjae too low for me to hear, smiled at me with that smile, and left. Shin paused beside me as he passed. "You're good at this," he said quietly. In Korean. Not just the translating. I looked at him. He met my eyes briefly. "He doesn't say things easily," he said. And he walked to the elevator. I stood alone in the marble lobby. The city outside the glass doors was alive and indifferent and beautiful. Johannesburg at night, my city. The one that raised me. The one that had always been enough. I went upstairs. I knocked on his door one last time. He opened it. Jacket off. The tiredness he managed so carefully in public, finally visible, settled into his face like it lived there. He looked at me and said nothing. He didn't need to. We both knew. "Tomorrow you leave," I said. "Yes. I know there's no version of this that." I stopped. Breathed. "I needed to say that you are not what I expected. Any part of you." He was quiet for a long moment. "You are not what I expected either," he said. "In every possible way. In every way that matters." I nodded. I was proud of how steady I was. "Zara. Don't." "I'm not sorry," he said. "The third time. The last time." I looked at him. "Neither am I," said. I turned. I walked to my room. I closed the door behind me. I sat on the floor with my back against the door, and I let myself feel every single thing I had been managing for 14 days. I did not cry for long. My mother raised me to feel things completely and then stand up. So I felt it completely. And then I stood up. He was gone when I came down at 7. The whole world of him. The black cars. The careful men. Shin. The quiet, constant hum of something powerful kept precisely in check. All of it lifted, like a weather front that had passed through and rearranged the air. At the reception desk, there was a plain white envelope with my name on it. Inside, one line. In Korean. In handwriting that was neater than I had expected, though I don't know why I was surprised. This was a man who did everything precisely. A woman with a spine like yours deserves a world with no ceilings. Below it, a phone number. Seoul area code. Different from any number I had for him. And at the bottom, if you ever decide the translation firm is beneath you. I stood in that lobby with the envelope in my hands and the morning light coming through the glass doors and the city of Johannesburg beginning its day the way it always did, loud and golden and entirely unbothered by what I was feeling. I gave myself 5 minutes. I counted them. I let myself stand there in the full weight of a thing that was real and beautiful and also, already, past. The particular ache of something you chose knowingly. The grief that has no name because it is not loss exactly, it is the space where a possibility used to be. 5 minutes. Then I folded the note. I put it in my pocket. I squared my shoulders. And I walked out into the Johannesburg, mourning the same woman I had always been, except not quite. The way you are never quite the same after something has opened you up and shown you your own capacity. My mother was right. A woman's spine is her greatest weapon. I was standing fully in mine. I resigned from the translation firm on a Wednesday. I did not call the number immediately. I sat with it for weeks. Picked it up, put it down. Told myself it was a bad idea. Told myself I was romanticizing a professional assignment. Told myself that Kang Hyun-jae was a complicated man in a complicated world and that my life was good and clean and mine. I believed most of this. And then one evening I was sitting on my balcony with a cup of rooibos warm in both hands, watching the Johannesburg sunset turn the sky all shades of amber and rose, and I thought about a man who remembered, from one passing comment, that I preferred tea without being asked. I thought about 11 seconds in an elevator. About a hand that did not let go in a dark car full of broken glass. About a voice that said my name like it had been saving it. I called the number. 3 rings. A voice, not him, but familiar in the way that his world had become familiar, answered in Korean. "We've been expecting your call, Miss Dlamini." Something warm moved through my chest. "I want to discuss a position," I said. "Of course," the voice said. "Mr. Kong thought you might reach out." Of course he did. I looked out over my city, Johannesburg, alive and golden, the place that had made me, the place that would always be home. And I thought, some doors, once you've seen them, were always going to be yours to walk through. You were just waiting to be ready. "When do I start?" I said. The voice told me. I smiled. I put down the phone. I finished my tea.